The camera flashes once, twice, then dies, like it's tired of pretending. I stand outside the church's grand oak doors, veil trembling in the summer breeze, watching my own wedding unfold through glass. Inside, laughter rises and falls, polite, distant. None of it meant for me. Rows of pews filled with Michael's family, co-workers, friends. Not a single face from mine. The reserved seats labeled parents of the bride remain perfectly empty, white ribbons swaying as if mocking the space they refuse to fill. Maybe they'll come late, Michael had whispered that morning, straightening his tie, hope flickering in his eyes like the last spark of a dying match. But I knew better. My parents weren't running late. They weren't coming at all. The officiant's voice echoed down the aisle, solemn and gentle. "Do you take this man?" And I said yes, with a smile that hurt more than the shoes pinching my feet. Because I wasn't saying yes to a man. I was saying yes to the truth I'd known my whole life, that love, for me, had always come with conditions. That no matter what I achieved, my parents only had eyes for my younger sister, Clara, the golden child with her perfect hair, her endless approval, her easy charm. As the vows ended and applause filled the room, I looked at the empty chairs once more. For years I had begged for their attention. Today, I buried that need along with my maiden name. Later, when the guests left and Michael's hand found mine, he tried to lighten the silence. "They'll regret it someday," he murmured. I turned toward the sunset, the first flicker of something sharper than pain forming behind my ribs. "No," I said softly. "They'll notice someday. And when they do, they'll remember exactly what they missed." Growing up in the Dawson household meant one thing. Clara's world was the sun, and the rest of us revolved around it. When she scored a C+ on her math test, Mom said, "She's creative, not academic." When I brought home straight A's, Dad simply nodded and said, "That's what we expect from you?" Emily. Expectation. That was my love language with them. No hugs, no praise, just an unspoken contract. Do everything right, and maybe you'll earn a little space beside Clara's spotlight. On Clara's 16th birthday, she got a silver Mini Cooper with a ribbon big enough to wrap around the house. Mine? A used laptop that still carried someone else's password stickers. "You're practical," Dad had said. "You'll appreciate something useful." Useful. Not beautiful. Not celebrated, just functional. By college, the divide was complete. They funded Clara's art degree in New York. Full tuition, private apartment, weekly allowance. Me? I studied civil engineering while juggling 3 part-time jobs. When I called home exhausted, Mom would sigh and say, "You've always been so independent. You don't need help." But I did. God, I did. When I graduated summa cum laude, they didn't come to the ceremony. Dad texted, "Can't make it, Clara's showcase tonight. Send pictures." So I sent one, me in my cap and gown, standing next to no one. The image of success no one cared to frame. The years blurred into quiet persistence, late nights, endless blueprints, the hum of fluorescent office lights replacing the sound of applause I never received. Every pay raise, every promotion, I mailed them an invitation to notice me. They RSVP'd with silence. Until one day, I stopped sending invitations, because the girl they ignored was becoming a woman they would no longer recognize. Success doesn't announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes, it starts with the quiet hum of a late-night office and the glow of a computer screen that never seems to turn off. After years of designing bridges for people who never knew my name, I finally got the chance to design something that would, the Seabridge Overpass Project. $100 million in infrastructure, 30 engineers, and one woman who everyone underestimated. Me. I poured everything into that project. The exhaustion, the loneliness, the ache that came from being invisible in my own family. Every line I drew, every calculation I solved, was a brick in the life I was building without them. When the project launched, the local news ran a segment titled "The Woman Who Built the Future." They called me visionary. My boss called me partner. But my parents? They didn't call at all. Then came the offer. a promotion to head structural engineer at Ryland Stone, complete with a six-figure salary and a signing bonus that could have bought the same silver Mini Cooper Clara once flaunted. 10 times over. I stood outside the dealership that night, hands trembling, the smell of new leather and power heavy in the air. There it was, a brand new Porsche 911 Carrera, gleaming under showroom lights like liquid fire. $135,000 worth of precision, freedom, and silence. I signed the papers without hesitation. It wasn't just a car. It was everything they said I didn't deserve, wrapped in German engineering and vengeance-colored paint. When the salesman handed me the keys, I thought of Dad's voice. "You're practical. You don't need flashy things." And for the first time in my life, I smiled at the thought of proving him wrong. Driving home that night, the city blurred around me, skyscrapers turning into streaks of gold and glass. Every turn of the wheel felt like reclaiming a piece of myself they'd chipped away. The engine roared through the empty highway. And it sounded like closure. I imagined pulling up to their house one day, the car idling in the driveway, their neighbors watching, whispers forming like smoke. "Did you see Emily's car? The Porsche?" After everything her parents did to her, revenge wasn't in the confrontation anymore. It was in the transformation. In being so radiant that their silence would no longer sting. It would suffocate them. So I made a promise to myself that night. They'd see me again. Not because I needed them to, but because I wanted them to know what they lost. Not the obedient daughter. Not the invisible sister. But the woman who stopped waiting for their applause and built her own stage instead. It was a quiet Saturday morning when the message came. A text from Clara, simple and short. "Mom's hosting a family brunch tomorrow. You should come. No apology, no explanation, just the assumption that I'd still orbit around them like always." For a few minutes, I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Every cell in my body screamed to ignore it. But then I glanced at the Porsche key on my desk, the metallic crest catching the sunlight like a signal flare. Maybe it was time. The next day, I drove up the familiar road to my parents' house, the same one where my achievements were forgotten, where Clara's framed art still filled every hallway. The neighborhood hadn't changed, but I had. The engine purred like contained thunder as I turned into their driveway. The sound alone made the curtains twitch. Dad was in the front yard, pruning roses, or pretending to. His hand froze mid-air when the Porsche stopped in front of him. He blinked twice as if the sunlight was playing tricks. The car door opened with a soft click, and I stepped out, heels sharp against the concrete, black sunglasses reflecting the disbelief on his face. "Emily?" he said, voice faltering. "In the flesh," I replied, smiling lightly. "Hope I'm not too early for brunch." For once, he was speechless. The man who always had a correction, a lecture, a backhanded compliment, now looked like he'd swallowed his own pride. Mom appeared next, holding a tray of pastries. The tray tilted dangerously when her eyes caught the Porsche emblem. "Is that—" she started. "Yes," I said simply. "Mine." The word mine lingered in the air like perfume. Expensive, undeniable, earned. Clara came running out a moment later, her voice high-pitched with confusion. "You drive that?" I smiled, unbothered. Among other things. Inside, the house looked the same, but I didn't. The girl who once tried to impress them with grades, degrees, and letters of achievement was gone. In her place stood a woman who carried herself like she no longer needed permission to exist. At the table, Dad cleared his throat. "You've done well for yourself." That was his version of an apology. I didn't need it, but I let him have it. "Thank you," I said, pouring my own coffee, steady hands betraying no emotion. "Turns out being ignored can be very motivating." Mom shifted uncomfortably. "You know we've always been proud of you." I laughed softly. "Proud? Of what exactly? The silence? The absence?" Her eyes darted away. "We thought you didn't need us." "And maybe that's where you were right," I said, leaning back. "Because look at me now. I didn't." The words weren't cruel. They were calm, measured, a verdict years in the making. When brunch ended, I stood to leave. They followed me out to the driveway like spectators watching a miracle. As I opened the car door, I caught my reflection in the window. Steady, self-assured, whole. Mom's hand brushed my arm. "Emily, wait," she said quietly. "You've changed," I smiled. "No, Mom, I just stopped asking for less." The engine came alive with a deep growl that turned every head on the street. Neighbors peeked out, whispering, connecting dots that had never been theirs to connect. As I drove away, I didn't look back, but I didn't have to. Because for the first time in my life, my parents weren't looking past me. They were watching me go. It's funny. You spend your whole life chasing a kind of validation you think will fix you, only to find that peace was never waiting in someone else's applause. A month after that brunch, I woke up in my downtown apartment to the sound of rain against the windows. Soft, persistent, familiar. The Porsche sat in the garage below, gleaming under the dim lights, untouched since that day. I didn't buy it to drive fast anymore. I bought it to remember that I could. Work had become more than a job now. It was a legacy. My design stood across skylines from coast to coast. Bridges, towers, hospitals, places where people would walk, heal, and dream without ever knowing my name. And that was enough. Sometimes on quiet Sundays, Clara calls. Her tone is different now, softer, humbler. She talks about wanting to build something real, something on her own. I listen, offer advice when asked, and hang up without resentment. Because I finally understand, revenge was never about making them small. It was about making myself whole. A few weeks ago, I got a letter from my parents. No excuses, no guilt. Just 6 words written in my father's careful handwriting. "We're proud of you, truly proud." I read it once, folded it neatly, and placed it in the glove compartment of the Porsche. Not because I needed the words, but because I wanted to remember the day they finally saw me, and the woman I became without their help. Now, when I drive along the coastal highway, the city lights catching on the hood like gold, I think about that wedding, the empty chairs, the silence, the hollow ache that once filled me, and I realize those empty seats weren't a tragedy. They were an invitation to fill my own life, my own way. The road stretches ahead, endless and open. The hum of the engine feels less like power now, more like peace. I don't drive to be seen anymore. I drive because I finally know where I'm going,